Yes, go ahead, Senator Francis Heyliger.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to the people of the territory. Good morning to the testifiers. Mr.
Good
Williams,
morning,
Ms.
Senator.
Fox, how are you? Well, my first set of questions I want to ask has to do in regards to public access as well as discussion and funding needed in order for public education when it comes to voting. My previous colleague spoke about your printing and binding and putting out information to the public. How do you feel that impacts you as a division getting your job done, or do you feel it actually helps the public when you invest in doing things like this?
They're supposed to. You're posing that question to the supervisor or myself?
The supervisor can answer.
Well, the expenditure of funds of marketing strategy, it will improve the voter education. So you really can't put a value on that. It's always good to market your product. And again, you just can't do it by board meetings or just doing demonstrations in certain areas. So if you prepare brochures and printed material, and you're able to put it out whether in schools, etc. We talk about programs really, voter education, so start from the elementary, 6th grade, not wait until they get to 12th grade to look at education and voting. So those are some of the marketing strategy the board has been discussing.
And if I can add, Senator Heyliger, in addition to that, voter registration drives, as we ramp up towards the elections, we get a lot of requests for voter registration drives. That encompasses all of that. So it's cost associated with doing those drives as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Last year, we had a very interesting election because we were dealing with COVID. We had to deal with a large absentee ballot voting. We had to deal with a variety of alterations as to how the election was done to protect ourselves dealing with the COVID pandemic. What do you foresee for 2022 outside of what you have discussed as it would relate to potentially absentee ballots? Do you think that how it was dealt with last election is something that you would like to see more permanent, to see going forward in the future?
Raymond Williams, Chairman. Yes, Senator, the 2020 elections due to COVID was a novice election from the perspective that a lot of what we planned and implemented and put into practice, when you look at after actions, yes, I anticipate absentee balloting to severely increase. A lot of people are concerned about transmitting COVID. So I suspect a lot of people will turn to absentee balloting more so than either early voting or election day voting.
2 minutes.
One of the things that even go ahead.
No,
one
go
of
ahead.
The things that even one of the things that I, as a candidate, even a resident throughout the years, have to do with public access to information, and I have had several conversations back and forth with the Board of Elections as it relates to a particular section in the code, Title 18, I think it's subsection 53, where it was written back in 1963, and it's somewhat limiting when it comes to the public getting access to information from the Board of Elections. Now, we're in 2021, and a bill that was written from 1963 that only speaks to paperwork and people standing over people and standing next to them just to get basic information. When we've done a lot of research with other election boards where a lot of the information is now electronic, where constituents and voters alike could just go online at the various locations and just see necessary information, as opposed to having to come in, sometimes pay you guys for paper and all sorts of things, that, in my opinion, this law is very antiquated, and I have put in legislation to alter it. This was actually part of the the alteration I've been doing that even led rise to this whole debate in the community over access to information and a black box. We're not going through that today, but I need to know, do you guys see a future for yourself if the law is altered to have more information ready to the public and easier access, as opposed to how this 1963 law that still governs you and is still sitting on the books that stops a lot of people from getting just simple information?
Time.
Any one of you can answer.
Yeah, let me take a shot, Supervisor. Raymond Williams, you opened Pandora's box from the perspective of election reform. I've been on the board almost 20 years. The Board of Elections has consistently submitted election reform amendments to the varying legislatures over that period of time. And prior to me, the answer to your question is yes. We do too want to move forward into the current technological age. Yes, we want to make sure that we're prepared to do that. So if we address, not in a vacuum, but wholesale, more election reform, and we've done this in the entire code, I think that we can do a much better job. So yes, and yes to your question, Supervisor Fox.
Supervisor Fox, and I'll add to that again. I've stated before, from 2013 when I came on board, the election laws are antiquated and needed to be updated. And like the chairman said, we've been trying all along. And so if you have a great suggestion with the reform of whatever law or section you're interested in, submit that and get it to Senator Gittins. That's what we're looking at right now for all the reform measures that we're going through. But the code is outdated.
When you say submit it to Senator Gittins, I don't understand what you mean.
Well, I'm saying maybe you could do that law. Sorry, I'm just talking how we submit to the legislature. Sorry, Senator, you can do whatever you would like the wording. Share it with us. See if we support that bill, and you can submit that bill. That's what I meant.
Well, thank you so much for clearing that up. I was confused for a second. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Francis Heyliger. Senator Alma Francis Heyliger, is she there? You may proceed.
Good afternoon again to my colleagues, the people of this territory, to the testifiers. My first round of questioning, I was listening to the testimony earlier, and you guys were speaking about $1 million worth of marketing money, which you had received about half of it, $500,000, and you had not fully expended that. I want to know what serious marketing and strategic planning that you guys have around businesses that are dealing with renewable energy, hydro energy, because you know we have a serious major issue here in our territory when it comes to WAPA Electrical Company and water. What serious marketing efforts are you putting into potentially bringing those types of businesses to the territory, if any?
Yeah. Again, we just concluded our energy sector RFP, and we did have direct input from WAPA and from the VI Energy Office in regard to that. As a matter of fact, the director of the Energy Office, Kyle Fleming, was the chair of that evaluation committee for us. So we've been continuously trying to find ways to bring energy costs down. During the Select USA, there's several entities that we spoke to that are in the renewable energy arena in reference to providing services here in the territory. Additionally, internally, we're looking at microgrids for the industrial park. So we're looking at ways to bring the energy costs down for tenants of the parks also. But we do continue to look at renewable energy as a serious sector, and we do invest in renewable energy. Let me just clarify. The $1 million was this year's appropriation. The $500,000 was last year's appropriation. So it wasn't that we didn't get a full amount and we haven't expended it. We're about $80,000, which is one allotment away, or one appropriation, one allotment away. So.
Thank you for clearing that up. The other question I want to ask, one of the things, and I'm looking to you guys because this is economic development for the territory. One of the major things as it relates to economic development or even, feeling at home within your own home in the Virgin Islands, is people are looking to even purchase homes. What types of effort is being made for private mortgage lending institutions? As you know, you might not know, we recently passed a piece of legislation during the last session to potentially open up for individuals to get assistance with their deposits. Private entities and private lending organizations potentially might have a little bit more leeway in doing that outside of traditional banking here in the territory. Have you guys tapped into that as a potential type of business that you're encouraging to come to the territory, or something you're looking into?
2 minutes.
So we work with Senator Payne in reference to workforce home development. So we've been intimately involved in his efforts in reference to get developers who do workforce type home projects. So we've been working in regard to that. We also have several mortgage and servicing entities that are part of our program, and they're talking about maybe bringing some of their mortgages services here into the territory. We don't, they won't necessarily be eligible for benefits from us because it'll be in the local market. But definitely we understand the cost of housing is also economic development, and we're looking at ways to get workforce housing here, or what used to be called middle income homes is now the term, I guess, is workforce homes. So we've been in discussions, but that's really not under our purview in reference to basically regulating those type of entities.
I just need for you to clarify something for me. You said you have several mortgage entities already participating in the EDA program, but they don't provide the services here to us in the territory? Is that what you said?
Yeah. What I said is we have several entities that do mortgage servicing, so they don't necessarily do lending. They do the back office operations of servicing mortgages. And so, again, for EDA eligibility, your client has to be outside of the territory. So it's no money that's coming into the territory as a result of the EDC program. So they don't provide services to entities here. If they do purchase mortgages and they're servicing those mortgages, then they would pay the full tax rate on any local servicing that's done to mortgages here in the territory. But they're primarily entities that service mortgages from various areas in the states on the mainland.
Thank you. As it relates to the hotel development program, what kind of long-term assurances are we potentially going to get, or we could potentially see from this? Because I know when this was developed, I knew the purpose of it. But do you see any, according to what I was reading, 168.7 million in occupancy taxes. What are the long-standing benefits do you see with this program overall?
Yeah, I think that 600,000 is more in investment, not necessarily occupancy taxes, but they are definitely outstanding. I think it adds to our tourism product if we can provide additional hotel rooms. So the inventory of rooms is important to the territory. Additionally, the workers there, salaries are paid, the money recycles through the territory. You get the wage taxes that are paid, you get the income taxes from the workers, and you get additional grocery fee tax as they spend money in different businesses. So there is a trickle effect, and there is definitely a long-term effect. Basically, you get properties rebuilt, that may not have been there, and also you have now investment into properties that were not going to be built. So it doesn't really cost the territory any money on the front end, because if the property isn't there, you get zero occupancy taxes. So if the property is built and you're using occupancy taxes for a period of time, you still get the employment, you still get the turnaround on wages, you get the local purchases, a variety of different things. So there's definitely a positive impact on the territory.
Well, I want to ask you one last question, and this is just from my knowledge and edification. If you have a company that was sold and transferred to another entity and their EDA benefits are to be up, would that company then be able to reapply as a new company? Because I'm trying to understand a little bit of some of what we've witnessed over the years where businesses has been transferred to relatives and I'm trying to understand, does that reset the process? Are they considered a new company? And we know what they're doing, but I'm trying to understand, how do you handle stuff like that?
It depends on the ownership, but also we run through a cost benefit model. So there has to be a positive cost benefit to the territory to get tax incentive benefits to start out with. So they would have to indicate where they're doing additional investments, or they're bringing in additional workers, they're doing certain types of improvements to the properties, how it will affect the economy of the territory. So there has to be a positive cost benefit for the territory for us to recommend incentives to our board.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for answering those questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Francis Heyliger. Francis Heyliger, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, testifiers, colleagues, and the people of the territory. My first round of questioning I would like to ask has to do with availability of housing. One of the things we had talked about earlier, or I was listening and I was looking through the funding, how, if there's a situation that there's available space, how do you let the public know in regards to that? Do you spend money on advertising? What do you do in order to let the public know that you are available and there potentially might be a housing space available for them?
I'm not clear on the question. When you say how space available?
Well, in regards to housing, the housing communities, et cetera, they come to you guys, or if, for example, someone just moved or they don't know that space is available, do you put it out to the public, or they have to come and contact you directly?
Senator, when you're saying space, are you referring to apartments to be rented?
In the housing communities, yes.
Were you talking about, you're speaking about apartments. Senator, as you may know, there is a waiting list for housing. So we do not necessarily have to advertise that we have apartments available to rent. We maintain a waiting list of individuals, and and for the voucher program, there's 3,800 individuals on the waiting list. For public housing, there's about 700, 800 on the public housing waiting list, and then there are individual waiting lists. So advertising is not necessary for affordable housing.
Oh,
Their
that's
waiting
what
list.
I'm trying to get to. So you rely on the waiting list. Now, for those that are receiving vouchers, as you know, there seems to be a rise in Airbnb in the community. Is this making your job a little bit more difficult in people finding locations? Is it affecting the bottom line in regards to the cost? I know you said earlier that you guys pay out about 20% higher than the national rate when it comes to stuff like this. Could you share with me how the rise in Airbnb is affecting that aspect of housing?
It affects it directly in terms of not having sufficient units available to service our waiting list applicants. And so the direct impact is that there's just competition for affordable housing units. I will ask if Ms. Anthony, Director Anthony, the voucher program, if you would like to add to that response for the senator.
2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Kayla Anthony, Health and Choice Voucher Program Director. Mr. Graham, you're correct. It does affect the units available in the market for families holding vouchers. But I also want to add that one of the things that we do at the agency is when we have a new development with new units available, we go ahead and we advertise the opening and the availability of units at those developments and invite families to apply for housing at those sites. So that's something that we do in order to ensure that we're fair to everyone in our community that may need to seek housing, low-income housing in our community.
So based on the question I asked earlier, you do advertise? Only when it's new housing developments?
Yes, and that's
Okay.
because we find that once that first advertisement is posted, we get hundreds of applicants who apply, and then they're placed on a waiting list. And most times our waiting lists are about 2 to 3 years long on the voucher program before a family can receive assistance.
Well, what type of other alternatives do you see that could possibly work here within our community outside of the situation we're in? Because if we have waiting lists with people trying to get housing that's 2-3 years out, we have a rise of Airbnb, which is reducing the stock that's available to be utilized for the voucher program. Do you have any research you're doing as potential alternatives? For example, emergency housing that could be brought in and set up temporarily. What alternatives do you think that could be utilized to assist with this?
There is options that are in the near future, perhaps of having a modular unit as a product. We haven't come across a product, a modular unit that is cost effective and can serve as a good alternative in the territory yet. There are perhaps some that are in Puerto Rico that may or may not serve the market. They're not aesthetically pleasing as the units that we are producing now. But the only other alternative is the main goal is to continue to produce affordable housing units. That's the primary goal. If when modular units becomes cost effective and aesthetically pleasing, we would certainly entertain that as an alternative.
So as of right now, your criteria has to do with the aesthetics of how they look and also the cost effectiveness. Have you done any type of research outside of what you said, potentially Puerto Rico, to seriously tap into these modular units? Because I'm very much concerned, as you're saying, when I'm hearing 2-3 years out. I mean, affordable housing is a difficult thing. And I will be honest with you, I would not mind living in a square box if it afforded me the ability to be in a home with myself and my family. I'm not too worried about aesthetics, but the viability of having my own space. And I do agree with cost effectiveness, but we also know here in the territory things cost a little bit more. And potentially if we're going to go after getting funding and even grants, et cetera, I'm sure the federal government and ourselves would be able to factor that in. So I would encourage you guys to really start looking into that. And don't worry too much about the aesthetics. That's my thought process on it. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to finish you the last, and then I'll give everybody